ticklish business any way you look at it. Come on, we'll stick together.
Of Ticklish Business, the podcast all about old Hollywood. As always, I'm your host, Kristen Lopez, and we return with our look back at the 16th annual TCM Classic Film Festival. For the next hour or so, you're going to be hearing nothing but audio from the various guests and panelists at this year's fest. All of them hosted by TCM hosts including Eddie Muller, Alicia Malone, and Ben Mankiewicz. If you like what we're doing on the podcast by bringing audio like this to you, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. Patrons get access to all sorts of bonus content, including our various bonus shows, including Based on a True podcast and doubled features, as well as getting swag like books and pins. Several of the Ben Mank-centric buttons that I made for the festival this year I had extra, so I will be sending those out to patrons. So consider becoming a patron. Just $1. You get access to our entire archive for free over there. You can do that at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. So I'm going to pass the mic, proverbially speaking, to the various TCM people that I got to interact with this year. What you're going to be hearing on this episode is Ben Mankiewicz, Dakota and Elle Fanning introducing Michelle Pfeiffer at her handprint ceremony. That's going to be followed up by Alicia Malone and Barry Bostwick at the intro for the midnight screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Then it's going to be Eddie Muller and Dana Gould at a screening of I Love You Again, followed by Michael Mann, Al Pacino, and Ben Mankiewicz all talking about Heat. Now, this is just part one of our TCM audio. If you want to listen to the rest of the audio, which includes the likes of the poolside screening of Clueless, Eddie Muller's fantastic discussion with Ernest Dickerson about The Big Combo, the intros for Suddenly Last Summer, Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and Mark of Zorro, and Michelle Pfeiffer herself doing her handprint ceremony. You can listen to all of that over at Patreon. That's going to be Patreon specific. I'll be back at the end to close us out, but until then, enjoy listening to our TCM Classic Film Festival audio.
An actress who has stood toe-to-toe with Al Pacino twice, Scarface, and Frankie and Johnny, with Glenn Close and John Malkovich in Dangerous Liaison. Michael Keaton in Batman Returns. Cher, Jack Nicholson and Susan Sarandon in The Witches of Eastwick. With both brothers Bridges in The Fabulous Baker Boys. Daniel Day-Lewis in The Age of Innocence. George Clooney in One Fine Day. Harrison Ford in What Lies Beneath as an intriguingly complicated spy with Sean Connery in The Russia House. With Robert De Niro in The Wizard of Lies. And yet, I still haven't mentioned the movie that made me fall in love. You think I'm going to say Married to the Mob, which is a perfect romantic crime comedy, but that is not it. I fell hard for this woman the same year, 1988, as she waxed on about angel hair pasta and rigatoni quattro formaggi in Tequila Sunrise. I've seen this film minimum 11 times. Still can't entirely follow it. Doesn't matter. It all works because like Mel Gibson and Kurt Russell in the movie, everybody was dazzled by Michelle Pfeiffer. Now, back to Grease 2. Look, she wanted a whole lot more than The Boy Next Door. She wanted hell on wheels. I know enough actors to know that what Michelle Pfeiffer does isn't easy, but there is an effortless quality to her performances. An ability to convey this relatable honesty to every single character she inhabits. Whether she's singing Cool Rider to Maxwell Caulfield, exposing her aching heartbreak as John Malkovich coldly rejects her, or as she lends this unexpected humanity to Ruth Madoff, forced to confront her guilt and responsibility as the wife of Bernie Madoff. She has been so good for so long that you might forget that she looks like Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean, this is an actor who fooled Martin Scorsese, who I'm given to understand knows how movies are made. After he saw her in Jonathan Demi's Married to the Mob, he told her he thought she was a brunette from Jersey. She isn't. But as a man married to a brunette from Jersey, I can tell you that she nailed it. She has been at it for 45 years. She was already great when she started, and she has only gotten better. help us salute Michelle Pfeiffer this morning, please welcome to the stage two young women who grew up idolizing Michelle and her work and now find themselves her friend and colleague, Dakota and Elle Fanning.
A North Star for me, the one and only Michelle Pfeiffer. At 6 years old, I worked with Michelle on my first film, I Am Sam. What a stroke of luck for me. The obvious things about Michelle are her undeniable talent and her otherworldly beauty. But the most obvious qualities, once you get to know her and work with her, are kindness and grace. She leads with a quiet strength, often soft-spoken, but never without meticulous thought. I saw her as this magical woman when I was 6 years old, and I am looking at her the same, standing here today. I have told this story publicly before, but it is worth saying again in this forum. I turned 7 on I Am Sam, and I didn't have many scenes with Michelle, just a few, but she was there on my 7th birthday. I walked in that morning to a fully decorated trailer and was invited into hers to be showered in birthday Barbies. I could not believe what was happening. I was so excited. And as I've grown up, I have never, ever forgotten it. Not only because it was special and singular, not many can say Michelle Pfeiffer decorated their trailer and gave them Barbie presents on a movie set on their 7th birthday, but it set an example of the kind of person to be with a young actor on set. To go out of your way to make them feel seen and special. She created a memory that I will never forget, and a memory that became indelible to the foundation of my understanding of what it means to be a pillar in our industry. I had the privilege of working with Michelle again almost exactly 20 years later on The First Lady. Her transformation into Betty Ford was awe-inspiring. But the thing I am most grateful for from that experience was getting to know Michelle in a new way as a 27-year-old woman. She has given me precious advice, and we have laughed many times until we have cried. I cherish every moment I spend with you. The overt gestures are the fun stories to tell, but the way you conduct yourself in the quiet moments in between are the true landmarks of your character. I remember being a little girl and visiting this magical place of hand and footprints, placing my tiny hand into the hands of all the movie stars. This would have been very shortly before I met Michelle for the first time, and to think that I am here to be a part of this moment is surreal, to say the least. There is no one more deserving of being commemorated in this way than Michelle. Your brilliance on screen is only eclipsed by who you are as a human being. You have set an example of what is possible professionally, but the key to that success is inextricably tied to the caliber of your heart. I hope you feel seen today in the way you have always seen me and countless others. You are exceptional in all the ways to count. It is a joy to celebrate you, and I love you very much.
And realness, that her prowess is just a fact that's shared by all. Michelle is a once-in-a-lifetime actor. And I first worked with Michelle on Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. She was Queen Ingrid to my Aurora. I stepped onto that set giddy at the opportunity to share the screen with her. And from Dakota's experience alone, I knew that I was in for a treat. I relished that time together, and like my sister, I couldn't help but be astounded by both her professionalism and warmth. Michelle has a certain quality about her, and her light shines on you when you're with her. And when the encounter ends, you find yourself yearning for that light again. Michelle makes you feel held as a person and supported as an actor. She is present, thoughtful, and utterly dedicated to excellence. Effortlessly, she just brings up everyone around her. This year, I've been fortunate enough to work with Michelle again, this time on a series Dakota and I are producing and David wrote, and it's based on the book Margot's Got Money Troubles, where Michelle plays my character's very complicated mother. She's maternal without being nurturing, unconditional in her love, yet exposed in her own emotional and esteem insecurities. And from the first table read, Michelle unlocked a truth that made the nuanced mother-daughter relationship of our respective characters resonate. She radiates authenticity, and she is just nothing short of captivating. Michelle's performance on our show is just the tip of the iceberg, mentioned before, but nominated 3 times for an Academy Award. And I realized if a musical artist mentions her in one of their songs, it will sure to become a hit. Shout out Uptown Funk and Riptide. Michelle Pfeiffer, that white gold. She has transformed time and again into characters who feel tangible, unforgettable, and have become iconic in the canon of Hollywood film history. Catwoman in Batman Returns, Angela DeMarco in Married to the Mob, Suki Richmond in The Witches of Eastwick, Elvira in Scarface, Ellen Olenska in The Age of Innocence, Madame de Tourvel in Dangerous Liaisons, and of course, the incredible Susie Diamond in The Fabulous Baker Boys. Michelle slithering in red on that piano, belting, making a whoopee, is ingrained in our minds forever. Susie, much like Michelle, oozes with charisma, and there is just absolutely no one else we can imagine playing her because no one can do what Michelle does. The character's texture and depth are a direct result of her dedication. She excavates within the character a heartbeat and purpose that makes her radiate on screen. She is masterful in her craft. Michelle, you are an inspiration for both your art and the shining example you set as a person. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are. And I'm just so grateful to be here today to celebrate your brilliance, and I love you so much.
I'm just like scared. I'm very happy. Here I am with you all to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Screening. We've got plenty of treats in store. This was the creation of Richard O'Brien. And lyrics and co-wrote the script with director Jim Charman, and he also played Riff Raff and took this monster from the stage to the screen. Now it is the longest continually running movie theatrical release in the world in history. So many fans and a great community, and we are lucky to have with us one of the stars of the film. You'll know him from his many TV and film appearances, but we're just mad about this, Brad. Please welcome Barry Bostwick.
I must say that Janet, by the end of the movie, was a bit of a whore. But that was the character, certainly.
The character.
Yeah. Right.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
I'll just say one thing.
Yes.
What the hell are you guys doing here? It's past midnight. In 6 years or 7 years, and I'm sure a lot of you haven't been up past same amount of time. So if you feel the need to fall asleep, you can't.
No, you are not
People will
allowed.
be yelling and screaming and throwing crap at you.
Yeah.
So, you can maybe sneak out, during one of the interludes between the rock and roll, but stick with it as long as you can, because this is it's an exciting evening for me, and I think I should let Alicia talk now because I cut her off twice. Right.
We're all here to hear from you, and it's such a great feeling at these midnight screenings. I know the film came out in 1975, but it wasn't long until these midnight screenings started to happen.
Right, because it was a flop when it first came out. It wasn't seen by very many people, and in fact, there wasn't even an opening in New York, if I remember correctly. That's where I was living at the time. But there was an opening in London, and people came out of the screening going, well, wait a minute. This isn't as lively as the stage show that was King Schroeder beyond that at this point, and there was a lot of concern that it was slow, that there was too much time between the dialogue and the lines, and that's one of the reasons why audiences have since then come up with all this crap that they yell at. because of the space that was left between the lines, and so tonight, if you have anything witty to say, yell it out. But,
You were the best George Washington.
Probably the only George Washington since the general. But thank you very much. I was the best. Oh shit, you must be older than I am. Yeah, George Washington. Well, let's talk about George Washington. Screw this thing, yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, no, that was first time George Washington was really portrayed, I think, as a real human being and not just a face on the dollar bill. The dollar bill, right?
Yes. What's interesting about all these call-outs is that this kind of happened organically, didn't it? Pre-internet.
Yeah.
It just slowly, it was like a communal experience.
Yeah.
To create this script.
Yeah, well, and I think what was the first one was from what I was told was a kindergarten teacher from Long Island at the Waverly Theater in New York in '76, I think, when it was just starting to take off. At one point in the movie, he during the scene in the rain, when we go in, he yelled out, "Buy an umbrella, you cheap bitch." And that was the first one. And then the next week, apparently, 2 people said that. And then people just started, coming up with their own, you don't hear. There's your umbrella right there. Yeah. There's a light over at the Frankenstein place. Look at that face. And you say you don't want to be an actress.
That'll keep me dry.
Yeah.
Did I call that for that?
So it was.
Umbrella, you cheap bitch.
So it opened up in Westwood here, and it's one of the first places in the country that actually was starting to get somewhat of a people coming to see it. And Lou Adler, who was the producer of it, used to go and sit outside and watch the audiences come in and out, and he realized quite early on that it was the same audience, that people were coming back 3-4 times, and I think that's when he sort of got the idea, because he was really the Svengali of this whole thing, Lou Adler, and he decided that, well, let's see what we can do with this, and maybe find an audience, or find some way to give this to an audience where they can go weekend after weekend or night after night. And so I know they went to 20th Century Fox, and then they tried to do it. They tried it in Austin, I think Austin, right? And you probably know this better than me. No, you don't. Okay. I'm just 50 years ago. Here's what I remember about it. I got off the plane in London. And then I got on the plane in London, and I don't remember anything of the 5 weeks when we shot this damn thing at Bray Studios. We were, it was very cold, and it was a very low budget movie, and we were all just fascinated with all the characters in this, because they were very similar to who they were in real life. Pat and Nell and me and the whole group. I mean, I think I was the only one that I might not have been quite as conservative and as dull and as living in the past as Brad, But I was naive, and that certainly is what one of Brad's traits was, as well as, my Jen. But she ended up being a whore. So they went to Austin, and it worked out okay, but then they decided to put it on the midnight circuit. And then they, and the first real big explosion was at the Waverly in New York City. And, and it pulled in a very interesting crowd of people. It was a gay crowd. It was an alternate crowd of people who had no friends. And they would come on a Friday and Saturday night, and they created their own community, right? And they created, and then they slowly created this phenomenon, which ended up, and still is, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is really a movie with two scripts. We have the script that we were doing statically on the screen, and then the script that over the years developed from the audience's wit. Or shit, one of the two. So it's there's a whole album out. I don't know of just the callbacks from the audience, and it's just a whole LP of this cacophony of an audience yelling and screaming, almost between every line, in the movie. So at the Waverly, Sal Piro, who was part of that initial group, would come up and he would sort of be the interlocutor, and he started talking, getting everybody, organized in some way and safe. And then people started dressing up for Halloween there, and then people were coming up with more and more lines. And then Sal Piro sort of took over the whole fan base of it and created what became, I think, ultimately this audience participation, spectacle. It's new. Yeah. It's never been done before.
Yeah.
And it was spontaneous. With the rude, the crude, and the unglued. And that's sort of how it started and how it's still around, because it's basically, it's a fairy tale, Rich O'Brien once said, it's a movie that any 12-year-old could enjoy.
Yeah, I did as a 12-year-old.
You did?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You told me
Did you have any questions?
Yes, several questions.
Okay, right now, do you have any questions?
Oh, I do. Well, one thing I wanted to do is give a shout out to the shadow cast that are involved with these productions. We have they are volunteers and very passionate and full of a lot of talent.
Yeah, but the shadow cast have kept this thing alive all around the world since the 70s, and they are along with Sal, they have developed a love and a creativity that is unending for this little sexcapade thing that we made, this little space documentary. I've met so many of them over the years, and I love them all because they are so dedicated, and they have a certain naiveness that we all had back then, and they just want to get up and perform and love the message, I think, of the film, and they create their own sort of mini communities, and I've talked to so many of them who have said, well, I didn't really have anybody, I didn't have a great friendships, I wasn't a club member in high school, I wasn't an athlete, and I found this group of people who loved them and supported them no matter what they looked like, how they acted, what they certainly what their sexual issues were, or not issues, but proclivities. So it's it's a passion project for everybody, as it was for us back in 1974, I think.
And a passion project for our MC. Would you like to hand over the reins?
Oh, right now.
Yeah. But first, can you please thank Barry Bostwick?
I get to come out here with what's left of my martini. That's what's great. Boy, this is weird. I feel like I'm actually playing to the pool because I can't see any of you people with these lights, and you're all down under the heaters at the end, right? So we'll see what we can do about that. But okay, I'm not going to vamp too long here because I want to bring out this gentleman who is absolutely fantastic, writer, actor, great comedian, and just one of the funniest guys you will ever meet. Dana Gould. Bring it on, Dana. Come on. Hello. Okay, you dressed appropriately. You've got the pea coat on and everything. Are we going to do the sitting or standing?
Let's stand.
Okay,
we can shift.
Exactly, we can keep moving around. Okay.
I wore this because the film tonight takes place largely on a boat. Beginning?
At the beginning, yes.
So we have like an offshore breeze. I wanted to dress nautical for it.
Very good. And how many? This is a TCM crowd, so I'm going to say there's got to be lovers of William Powell and Myrna Loy in this office, right? And so one of my personal favorite films from the early 30s is One Way Passage, and it's like this is like One Way Passage, just a different alternate version of that film, right? And
That is true.
Yes, and the only connection this film has to noir, and I figure this is why they asked me to do this with you.
I was genuinely curious as to how they got you to do this, and now I'll find out.
Amnesia plays a big part in this film, and as we all know, in film noir, amnesia is film noir's version of the common cold.
And it was this thing in the 30s and the 40s where people would bump their head and then forget who they were for 9 or 10 years, which is something we lost, I think, after World War II. It stopped happening to people.
Right now, Dana, I think it's going to make a comeback because I would like to hit my head right now and forget everything that's going on and wake up in like 9 or 10 years with no memory of it at all. Yeah, exactly.
This is a true story. I was a writer on The Simpsons for a period of time. That's not the story, but thank you. We were pitching an episode. What if Marge bumps her head, forgets she's married to Homer, and he has to woo her again? And we all went, I've seen that in a million movies. Like, I don't know. But somebody said, no, I like that, let's do it. The guy who wrote the episode, within a year of that episode, his wife bumped her head, had amnesia, forgot she was in love with him, they got divorced, and we are 50% on whether or not it was real or she just had a genius idea to get out of the marriage. And that's not a lie. That is the truth.
Unbelievable. Wow. Okay, so that's the noir version.
That is but it's also because I saw The Lady Eve last night. The 30s was also a time, and you have that in this movie, where if you turned around and then came back in a different coat, you'd go, oh, I'm Phil, I'm not Eddie, and I'd go, oh, hi, Phil.
Yeah, exactly. This is what we love about these movies, right? I mean, they're utterly preposterous, and you will see when the credits roll on this film that there's a huge number of writers on this movie. And I love that about old Hollywood, because people think that's like a new thing, like the writers' rooms and all that kind of stuff. No. Back in the day, they would bring in somebody, and honestly, there are a couple of times in this movie when you know this is the work of somebody they brought in later to write these 10 minutes of the movie, right?
It's amazing. One of the things, having been in a lot of those rooms for modern comedies, the magic of comedy is that you don't know if a joke is going to work or not until you hear it in front of an audience. And that goes from me to Mel Brooks and Steve Martin. Until you hear an audience react, it's a crapshoot. You don't know. And so with a lot of comedy movies, they'll get a cut, show it in front of an audience, film the audience watching the movie, and then a writer's room will sit and go through the movie and like, that needs to be fixed, that doesn't work, we need to redo that. And it's a very laborious, organic process to get a movie this tight.
Yeah. Now, if you, as a writer, how great would it be to write for William Powell and Myrna Loy?
What is really impressive about it, I sat and rewatched this movie again today, is how easy and effortless they are as actors. The first scene when he wakes up after the accident, it's like the chemistry in his body changes. He so effortlessly becomes a different person. And he's so good. So good.
Absolutely. And Myrna Loy, I think, is probably the coolest woman in the history of movies, right?
Yes.
I mean, because I just think from the very beginning, she was just this ideal depiction of a smart, kind of sassy, wonderful, feisty, but dignified woman. And she was like a role model unlike any other. I mean, I just think she is so fabulous.
Without a doubt, the hottest chick named Myrna I've ever encountered.
there is that, yes. And I can't really get away with this because if anybody here saw Teacher's Pet on the opening night when I introduced that, right, with Clark Gable, I said, Clark Gable is basically playing my dad in that movie. My dad was a newspaper man, and he actually kind of looked like Clark Gable. But I'm going to confess that I lie all the time, because if I'm introducing a Clark Gable movie, I say, that's my dad. Now I'm introducing a William Powell movie, and I'm saying, that's my dad. Because my dad did bear a great resemblance to both of those guys. Right? It was mainly the mustache.
I got to say that when I introduced Barfly at a different festival.
Okay, so how many people, by clapping because I can't see you, have seen this movie before? Okay, so I want to ask a question, just as I'm doing a focus group right now in front of you. Do you come to the TCM Festival to see the movies that you already know and love in this environment on big screens, or do you come here to find discoveries that you haven't seen before? So I'm going to say, how many people come here because you want to see Now Voyager and Bringing Up Baby one more time on a big screen? How many of you come to TCM because you want to see something that you haven't seen before that we've managed to pull out of the vault? Okay, the new people won on that vote.
Yeah, but it's also, and there's always streaming, there's always, nothing beats seeing a movie on a big screen with an audience.
Absolutely. And especially when there is the prospect of falling in a swimming pool. I think
if anybody wants to get in one of the floaties, there are 4 available.
Yeah. Okay. So, are you ready for this? Yeah. Okay, because this is really a fun movie.
Right. So good.
Yeah, I know. I'm not entirely sure what Alfalfa is doing in this film when Carl Switzer shows up.
Robert Blake. Oh, very young Robert Blake.
Very young Robert Blake in this movie, but he's in a lot of movies. He's in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and he plays John Garfield as a boy in Humoresque. Mm-hmm. So Robert Blake had a long career. Damn shame how that career ended up.
I was going to say, great story if it ends there. Unfortunately, it doesn't.
Yeah, oh, there you go. But that's not the note I wanted to end on. So here you go. Thank you so much for coming out to this show. They're going to warm you up. The movie's going to warm you up because it's so fabulous. Here it is. I Love You Again.
Thank you, Genevieve. Good evening, everybody. We made it. Another action-packed TCM Classic Film Festival. I trust everyone had a sensational time. I didn't hear on behalf of everybody at TCM, I have to apologize about Eddie. I'm sorry. He is who he is, It's been a fabulous festival for me, specifically. I mean, from opening night here with George Lucas, and you know, I'm not entirely sure what that was, but I know that it was. I think it was really good. It ended up like being something special. I really enjoyed it. Thanks to George for turning out to that, and for The Empire Strikes Back. My goodness, I had Jaws. Over the packed Egyptian, we were turning people away. A British print, a BFI print, thanks to our partnership with BFI too. A British print of Jaws, and Lorraine Gary was there, and you know, she played Chief Brody's wife. And you know, you do these interviews, and you don't know what you're gonna get, and I'm like, I don't remember how it came up. I'm like, how was it working with you know, Richard Dreyfuss? I didn't care for him. A little bit of a reset, come back a couple minutes later. With, of course, she did most of your scenes with Roy Scheider. She was like, yeah, not a good guy. He was mean. But she was super into Robert Shaw. So, no, she was great. I mean, and I like, whatever. Not everybody has to be best friends, but I love the candor. Keir Delay for 2001. That guy was amazing, and it turns out we share a particular love of Paths of Glory, and you know, and Stanley Kubrick you know, changed his life, and he was just so grateful and such a great storyteller. So many great things this week. Michelle Pfeiffer, hand and footprint ceremony. So it's been a sensational festival, and of course it's nothing without you. You're why we do this, and thank you guys for being so supportive through good years and bad. We can always count on you. So thank you very much. Before we get to tonight's screening, I'd like to acknowledge the people who made this. Oh, one more thing. The TCM Festival. There were two women who I met on they were getting their badges, and maybe they're here tonight. I don't know, but they had an Eric Blower T-shirt. Like, what? Where else in the world are people going to have an Eric Blower T-shirt? It was Edward Everett Horton and Eric Blower. Like, that's why this is a special place. Okay, I got to begin to acknowledge the people who make this festival possible. You heard from the primary person just moments ago, the festival's executive director, Genevieve McGilligan. Also, a round of applause for our outstanding festival director, Mark Wins. And managing director, Lindsay Griffin. That's the triumph. Also, 3 cheers for our brilliant programming team led by Charlie Tavish, Stephanie James, and Scott McGee. And all these guests that we've talked about. I didn't mention how great James Cromwell was. He came back today for another screening of Enchanted Cottage. He was the best. He has always been the best. But the incredible and dedicated talent team that brought all these people in. Missy Burns-Gordon, Susan Bisak, Dory Stegman, Brandy Austin, and Nicole Hill. They worked tirelessly to make sure that you guys have one special event after another to enjoy here at the festival. And I need to send a special thanks to Liz Winter, who is like TCM's indispensable. She's our utility infielder, and we would largely be lost without her. On behalf of everybody here, I hope you had a blast and that you'll join us here next year for the 2026 TCM Classic. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on the boat, TCM Cruise in October. Now, on this final night of the 16th Festival, we're excited to bring you an epic story of cops and robbers, a drama celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. What makes it an epic? Well, for one thing, it brought about the long-awaited on-screen face-off between two of the finest actors of any generation, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. And man, did they deliver. It also features an incredible supporting cast that it seems unfair if I don't mention almost all of them, so I will speak quickly here because casting this movie is part of the reason why it's great. I'll begin with the late, great Val Kilmer. Also John Boyd, Tom Sizemore, Amy Brenneman, Ashley Judd, Diane Venora, Natalie Portman, Michael T. Williamson, Wes Studi, Ted Levine, Dennis Haysbert, William Fichtner, Hank Azaria, Kevin Gage, man, who scared us all as Wayne Grow. It's a riveting story, unforgettable shot selection, perfect pacing, relentless as the characters, and that all goes, credit for that goes to writer-director Michael Mann. So let's welcome Michael Mann to the stage. Pacino. It was coming, I swear. So, I think many people thought that you and Robert De Niro had already been in a movie together. And of course, you were in the same movie, but you had never been in a scene together. So, first of all, I know Michael, you and I guess the producer Art Linson thought, or discussing and thought that the right guys for this are Pacino and De Niro. Is that right? Yeah. Yes. And so, how do you go about? Did you know them enough to call them and say, "Hey, be in my fifth movie"?
I did. Elle and I knew each other. Jimmy Kahn introduced us when I saw the great movie you made called Thief.
Yeah, with James Caan. That was your first movie?
Right, but I didn't, so I knew, anyway, Al and I talked to Al, and, we got together on this, and then Bob came into it, and we, and it was ironic because I almost didn't make this film. There's a moment in time in which I thought I was going to produce it and have somebody else direct it. And then my producer talked me out of it and said, "You're out of your mind, you've got to do it, and then who should be in it?" We're at the Broadway Deli, which was used in a scene, when De Niro goes and meets Amy Brenneman. And he said, "You've got to do it," and we started talking about who would lead the ideal cast, and it was Al and Bob, and and off we went.
So, Al, you knew you hadn't been in a movie with Robert De Niro. I'm guessing that wasn't a surprise to you. But what was that experience like? I mean, let me ask you this: do you have any sense of either of you guys of what you mean to people like us, that putting you two guys in a scene together was going to matter to people who love movies?
No, I didn't. Because I met Bob in 1968 in Manhattan, and I just had a brush in with him. It was nice, and I saw that he had just about it, kind of magnetism and everything. And then I got to know him, of course, throughout the years, 20 years, so I knew him pretty well before we did the film. I didn't have that. I didn't think of it. I mean, because we were talking all the time, I didn't think it was anything special that we were doing. But apparently it was. I have to say, that's it's not modesty talking here. It's just I'm so damn dumb. I sometimes just get carried away in other things, and I hope I don't do that tonight. But yeah, so, but I did know he's an actor. He's a great actor. I mean, really great. And he did something. I think that was. I don't know if you mastered it, Mike, but he said, "Let's not rehearse."
Well, we did. I believe in very rigorous preparation, but you never ever take anything to that moment where you wish you'd have shot it. So then you're talking about a scene, you're talking about character, you're doing a lot of work, which we all did, on understanding who these characters were, and Elle and Bob and Val and everybody acquiring the skills that these characters would have had in real life. But then rehearsals are very delicate. You never take something, and then particularly this pivotal scene, which is the nexus of the whole movie, you would never actually rehearse it. We talked about it in paraphrase, but we were all of the same mind.
I wasn't. I wasn't. You know, like, I usually rehearse, you know, I don't know why. So when he said it to me, I'm sure you must have made me conscious of it. We can't remember these things. But I must say, when Bob said it to me, I thought, this is a great idea, you know, not to rehearse. But you know, you got to know your words. No, isn't that what we do? So we knew our words. Surprisingly, it was a beautifully written scene by Mike, and then we just got there. For some reason, it was the right thing to do. The not knowing what we were going to say. So I really.
You guys are also, both of you, are masters of cadence. I mean, Mike writes the script, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't tell you how long to pause, where to dart your eyes, right? You know, that's you and Bob having created these characters.
Well, no, he usually shoots about 48 takes, and you know, get it, don't get it, you know. He'll know when we get it, you know. No, I mean, yeah, he doesn't.
Let's see, Elle was always great on take 5, 6, 7, or 8, right in that zone. And when we would get done, you know, and it would be great, I'd have it, I maybe have some variations on it, and sometimes Elle would say, can I do a free one? I said, sure. Well, the free one is,
can I do a free one?
It's basically being unplugged, which is Elle being unplugged. And so then nobody knows what exactly is going to happen in one of those things. So, including Elle, so there's a couple of scenes in the movie that are pretty riotous, which was the product of that.
Yeah.
And we
So
had
there's
one
some scenes
actor
in the
who
movie
came in
that-
about 2/3 of the way through and wasn't aware that we did this, and then kind of hit him as a surprise. But we didn't pick up.
Bob is so sometimes undistinguishable. You know, you see him in the street, a restaurant. He doesn't look like Robert De Niro. I never recognize him when I says, "I'm over here, Al." God's sake. I said, well, he looks like so many people sometimes because he plays so many. You know what I mean? Maybe I do too. I don't know. But, maybe actors do in general. No? Okay. I'll take the word.
So, Mike, did you have look, I don't know, this is such a guy running the interview question, but you knew these guys, you know this is, you're sitting there with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and you know they've never done a scene together, and here you are, you wrote it, and you're directing it. Was there was there extra quiet on the set? Was there a sense there that this was something really cool?
No, not at all. Because by that point, we had a very thorough pre-production. We had been shooting for 5 or 6 weeks. When I schedule a film, I work very hard on scheduling. I take a scene like that that's terribly important, and I usually put it in the middle of the schedule, because when you're making a film, everybody gets better at making that film as you're making it. So you'd never do something like that first. You would never do it at the end. So it was very carefully orchestrated about where in the schedule it would land. And by that point, even in pre-production, when we were talking about these rehearsals, we were concerned about our characters, about Neil McCauley, Vincent Hanna, and the significance of them coming together. So nobody's thinking outside the context of the story and the film and these characters and this collision, which is carefully brought together by all the events that preceded what you're about to see. And it's a very complex scene, and I can't imagine anybody else doing this except Elle and Bob and pulling it off. These two men are truly antithetical to each other. They have some components of their personalities that are totally, and psyches that are totally opposite each other, and two that are exactly the same. They're the only two people in the film who are totally self-aware. There's no self-deception. They are aware of themselves. They sometimes stimulate themselves in certain ways to be sharp and be on the edge. Hannah's character, and also with Neil McCauley, Bob's character. And so, it really was a very careful moment. And that's why I picked Kate Mantelini's, because it's a black and white interior. I wanted nothing to intrude in what these two actors were going to do.
I mean, for a guy who thought he knew a lot about that scene, it turns out I didn't know a lot about that scene. Kate Mantelini's, how many people here know Kate Mantelini's? I'm sure many. It was a wonderful restaurant on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles for a very long time, closed, 5-6 years ago. And that's where the scene was shot. So the fact that it provided sort of that sterile environment, a little slick, but somehow...
Sorry, did who provide this?
Say again?
I didn't hear what you said.
I said choosing that environment, the black and white nature of Kate Mantelini's. You didn't want it to be any place flashy.
I wanted it to be so that these two human beings, that all of your attention is focused on what's going on, because when Bob shifted like this, which may have put his hand closer to where he probably had a concealed weapon, right in the middle of dialogue, you would see Al do some other move that was counter, and there was a kind of an organic unity to the take. So I wanted to capture their work simultaneously, meaning there was an organic unity to take 10 that was different than take 11 and different than take 12. So that's why I was using 3 cameras, and most of the scene is take 11.
Most of it's take 11 with little sprinklings from other takes, but most of it's take 11. Wow. What do you recall of shooting that, Al? Yeah.
Well, I was relatively at ease, I thought, and that's the setting. I knew Bob, I knew Michael. I thought there was a great crew. You just felt comfortable doing it. And I think that's what the directors do. They set the ambiance so that you feel that this is what we're doing. You feel comfortable with that. Like it's almost like, I use the old story of I like to use this story all the time about a tightrope walker. And we all are in a sense, but that applies more for the theater, stage acting, because in movie acting, you could just say, I wasn't right there. Can I start that thing again? Like here, out tonight. I thought I entered with a little bit of, I should have entered like this. I'm joking. I swear I'm joking.
You want to do it again?
May I go back there? No, I feel that's what it is, and with film. And guys like Michael, great directors, you feel you have a net under you. You're protected by their intelligence, their wisdom, their imagination. And so that's very good to work with in that environment because you can trust them, so to speak. Sometimes when you do films, they don't pay attention to certain things, and you're somewhat. Am I saying something for the very first time in my life? I think but you say something that you just felt. I don't think that the director will understand this or something. I think I went, so you hold yourself back. And in this one, I didn't. And if you see it, you'll see. Of course, my character is intense, and also he's known to do a sniff now and then. And we had actually a scene in the film where Hannah, my guy, takes a toke, once or something. It's not in the film anymore.
Is that right? It's not in the film anymore?
No. That happens. Things get mixed around. Of course. So it all that it did is it may I may explain some of my reactions.
No, I got it. But I think it's.
But at the same time, it's very interesting. It was a choice that I had made. We had talked about it, but it's fine. I did a film where a guy sniffs a lot. Believe me.
Yes.
So, and that was done way before Heat. So I got that out of my system.
But I mean, I think it's this is gonna get into one thing that I just personally want to talk about. I don't know whether it's going to be as interesting to everybody else. That's a revealing moment when Hannah does a little, because you obviously you're a human being, you're going to get tired, but it's like you're in the middle of this run and you can't let yourself get tired. You won't let yourself slow down. So that's, to me, why he does it. I think it's very revealing and in character.
Yes.
And it also gets to a little bit of what is clearly a Michael Mann skill, which is like Elmore Leonard's novels. You know how to do bad guys. Like, your villains are interesting and rounded and intriguing, and sometimes they're the most interesting characters. I think if you think of De Niro, and you think of most of that gang, and you think of James Caan in Thief. Like, these are guys you want to know more about. Where do you think that comes from? Like, you like writing these guys?
It just comes from process. First of all, I don't think any other director knows how any other director directs films. When we're on a set with another director, we have no idea. So every director and writer, in a way, has his own process. And for me, the ideas that I respond to are usually sparked by coming into contact with somebody who may be, say, John Santucci, who's the thief that Thief is based on. And there was an event that happened. There was a foundation of Heat, and so then that kind of provokes, wow, this would be great. And so that provokes a quest, and then you invent a character, and then you put the ideas of combining these two characters, and then you go on a further quest and get yourself next to people who really do this. And that becomes a very rich experience, and also the milieu in which it's happening. So you get as close to the reality of it. I've never been interested in moving from something that's already existed in cinema or drama, but real people. So Charlie Adamson, who was an old friend, bumped into Neil McCauley, the real Neil McCauley, in a parking lot.
De Niro's character named Neil McCauley, based on a real criminal named Neil McCauley.
And they had been chasing each other, and they both became aware that McCauley, the De Niro character in real life, became aware that Charlie Adamson was pursuing him, and Charlie Adamson knew that he knew when they bumped into each other in a parking lot, and they almost went for weapons, but then Adamson said, "Let me buy you a cup of coffee." And the perception of Charlie's, of this thief, was kind of illuminating for me, in that he had great respect for him. He liked them personally, and as he said, he'd blow him out of the socks without thinking twice about it. So that became not a contradiction; it became both a truth, and that duality is there in the kind of genome of the making of the film.
Well, you managed to, not just for Al here and for De Niro's character, the two primary propulsive forces of this film. Almost every character in this movie has something more than just a little backstory. Like there is I don't know. I feel like I know more about characters in this movie than almost any cop movie I have ever seen, and I think that's a tribute to the really outstanding cast that I named there at the top. I take it a lot of thought went into not just Al and Robert De Niro, but the whole cast.
Yeah, to me that's the work, is to get as close to what's interesting about people. The first thing you learn is that everybody, regardless of who they are, whether they're a convict and Folsom president, or they're a hunter and searcher like Vincent Hanna, everybody has a mother, a brother, a father, a sister. They have concerns. They're either a White Sox fan or a Cubs fan. All of the dimensionality in real life is fascinating to all of us if we do this kind of work. And so to get yourself on a feeling and on a psychological basis, or a conscious basis, as immersed as you can into that real emotional human reality, that to me is what, the adventure of this, that's what it's all about.
Al, so I'm going to take it that this film has I guess it's the greatest shootout ever on film. I think it's fair to say. It's a stunning sequence. You hadn't done anything quite like that before, right? I mean, you've done some action scenes, but this was prolonged. I mean, we were just talking backstage. This was like, this is like the beginning to Saving Private Ryan, but on the streets of Los Angeles.
Well, you should see Scarface.
Were you in that?
No, not really. Yeah. I was in a tube. When I was up there shooting, alone my ass off, all those people, all those guys, and I was in this thing. I had to do mantras and everything, and smokes up in there. At least we were outside with this, but the choreography.
So and I'm going to interrupt you and let you continue, because that's really what you used, the word that I was going to use, was that different from Scarface, which is a legendary scene, is that this was like a lot more people involved and more shots, and focus keeps shifting.
Oh yeah, and you knew that. He's so staged it, it's like, and it was no getting out of it. It wasn't difficult to do because of the way he staged it. Because you knew where you were going, you knew what you were holding in your hand, and you knew what you could do and couldn't do, and then when you had to go around the corner, and I was sort of in shape to do it back then. I mean, but it was the group, so to speak. It was one of those big scenes where everybody's in it. And who knew? I thought it was going to be a gunfight thing, but it was masterfully choreographed by Mike. And I think that helped it a lot. When I see it, it's like, wow. It's really and then there was a robbery that took place. Remember the one that?
Right, North Lake Bank robbery. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
two years later in North Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't think but apparently it did. It affected these guys in some way,
Yeah,
because they said the newscaster said, these guys are from Heat, and they were really doing the thing. I didn't do anything.
There were, as I pointed out, there were bank robberies before Heat, and there have been bank robberies after. Yeah.
I've never seen one. Except in the next Michael Mann film.
So I got two questions.
Great bank, when they blow into the prison. I've seen Enemies 40 times. I love Johnny Depp, and I love Mike. That was a Dillinger. I have not seen what they did together.
Michael Mann films are events.
I think they're pretty good.
They're events, yeah. So real quick, I gotta. So
where are we going?
Well, they gotta see the movie. So I got two things.
Don't see it.
One. By the way, no. All right, here we go. Who hasn't seen E? See, like, there's a lot of folks who have not seen this movie. It's amazing every time.
I'm upset by that, guys.
So, first of all, you're promoting the movie. Tell me, you wanted to tell it. What happened in Paris?
Oh God, should I tell the Paris story? Well, we're in Paris, and we were doing public relations or whatever that is. You talk about the film.
Promoting it, yeah.
Promoting the film. So we're there in Paris. It's great, I love Paris. And I was there, we were going around, it was wonderful. I had a few friends there, so it was really wonderful. And I went on the show, and I thought it was, I thought it was like this right now. I thought I'm just gonna, go on there and talk about heat.
With somebody who hasn't seen Scarface, right?
Yeah, someone hasn't seen, or someone who didn't hear the high wire joke. I mean, the one where I just say, pull it out. I'm not going to. Complete waste of your time when I went into it. But this one was, I went on a French. So the guy who's the MC of it, oh my God, he's so amazing personality. So, what the fuck am I going to do? I don't understand what he's saying. Pardon my French accent. And so I don't know what to do, and I'm mesmerized by it. So we sit down, and I give you one of those ear things. Don't use it if they ever do it. That doesn't work. And so I'm there, and I'm sitting at the table, and I'm so taken with this guy. He's got such an enthusiasm, and I'm sitting there. Now I'm getting a little nervous, but he starts talking to me in French again, and he asked me a question. And he says, and I'm so taken with his number that I don't hear the translation in my ear, so I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. And I just went on, and he took over, because we were freaking out. I mean, it was and finally he got in there. Mike knew how to do it. He got me. I'm sitting there shaking, and he took it over. I remember that. That's the story.
Well, what happened? What happened is this 200-mile-an-hour stream of French, and we both had earpieces in with a translator, and the translator spoke like this. He said,
maybe that was it.
You think it's the slowest translator in the whole of France.
I haven't lived here through one of those.
This is a thrill. I want to thank you guys. I want to tell you all, those who've seen the movie are going to love it even more, seeing it at this big packed house and an audience. Those who haven't seen it are going to be dazzled by it. For all of you who haven't been smart enough to purchase Heat 2, which is a novel written by Michael Mann and Meg Gardner. I got it the first day it came out. I watched the movie that weekend. It arrived on Tuesday, so it'll be fresh in your mind. Read Heat 2. It is a prequel and a sequel, and it is soon to be, at some point, a motion picture. Yes? It's a great story and a great read, and it's thrilling. So, and you'll get more on Al's character, Vincent Hanna, more on Neil McCauley, also more on Chris, Val Kilmer's character. It's an amazing book. The movie is as good as it gets. We're thrilled to have Michael Mann and Al Pacino here. Thank you for a great time. Thank you very much.
As I mentioned, this is just part one of our episodes centered on the TCM Classic Film Festival. We have even more audio, which you can listen to if you become a patron at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. I want to thank our amazing top-tier patrons for continuing to support the show. That includes Allie Moore, Danny, David Floyd, Gates, McF, Rachel Clark, and Shawn Goodreau. Thank you all for continuing to support the show through our quasi-hiatus. That's actually not lasting much longer because we have a bunch of episodes planned, including one that's going to be dropping at our regular bi-weekly schedule. It's going to be with Karina Longworth, talking about her latest season of You Must Remember This. So please be on the lookout for that as we come back with a vengeance. You can always follow me on all social media at Kristen Lopez88. I also do a Substack called The Film Maven, which you can subscribe to at The Film Maven, that's 2Ms.substack.com. And my co-host Emily Edwards is always at Ms. Emily Edwards. Please consider following her as well as supporting our books. We are working on so many books. You can read her Viviana Valentine series, and I have my first book, But Have You Read the Book, which volume 2 is coming out next year. So please support us however you choose to support us. We will be back with a new episode with Karina in 2 weeks. Head over to the Patreon, and hopefully you enjoy all of our TCM Classic Film Festival audio. Till next time.